to support our students. We owe that to them, to be informed about where their learning's at, is really important at the PLC level, I think.
So we developed this at the beginning of the year just so we could begin to just track data more often, more frequently in terms of student proficiency. In the second semester, what we did is we really started seeing some concerns with our F data in terms of our freshmen, and we wanted to really start to understand maybe some root causes and some whys behind it. Going into this, using this protocol is really looking at what is within our sphere of influence. A lot of times what we were experiencing is we would think about our go-to was like how many kids were absent, and go to attendance being a major factor, which is an issue. However, we need to look at what students are here that we can impact and what is out of our sphere of influence, and how do we start to navigate our conversations in PLCs and our instructional decisions based on students who are here more often than not, and how do we support them to be at grade level.
We've developed a process over time. It's been about a 2-year thing to try and get our teachers more comfortable with looking at data. And so it's taken several approaches. One has been working on the culture of our PLCs, so making sure that teachers feel comfortable and vulnerable to actually look at their data, because they are putting themselves out there in a way that can feel uncomfortable. Last year, we developed kind of a standard template to try and guide them in their thinking. The problem with that was that it was very time consuming, and the timeliness of it was sometimes challenging in getting teachers to have similar data sets at the same time. And so we didn't necessarily stick with a standardized template that they're filling out.
PLC has looked at our classroom, individual classroom data as far as seminar placement, because in seminars we share our students. But we also have been using data in regard to our WIG, which is in relation to black males and the alignment to the overall population.
We start and end our PLCs around data. At the beginning of PLC, we look at data that we have all agreed to bring. For example, our in-the-moment monitoring data for the day. It could be pieces of student evidence in small chunks that align to the target we were covering for that day, or it may be more concrete data around a recent body of evidence that we've scored. Our students have started writing a literary analysis essay, which for English 4 is a 5-page big commitment. And one pattern we had noticed in years prior was that it was taking students a long time to plan their 5-page literary analysis. We would measure the data to see, are students progressing? Are they able to do more and more each time we practice so that they're prepared for the literary analysis essay? Or are they still stumbling over certain pieces that we need to revisit, reteach, provide more practice? It led to some really quality discussions around, what their gaps were and why they had those gaps.
In the past, in our PLCs, is we'd look at data at the end of an assessment, and then we'd wonder why our assessment data looks the way it does, rather than monitoring where student learning is in the day-to-day, the moment-to-moment, and looking at that data in PLCs and asking ourselves the questions why.
What specific actions are going to be taken because of the data analysis that you've done? Thinking of looking at data as a process and a way to continuously improve their instruction has been key to the work that we've done with our PLCs this year. So getting our teachers to think outside the box, that data doesn't have to always be summative and holistic, that it can be micro data sets. In my role as a leader, I've taken the approach of pulling data to kind of give them an overall picture of the in progress. So every 3 weeks, I share with the PLC, here's where, if this were the end of the semester today, here's where our kids would stack up. So how many kids do we have meeting proficiency? How many kids are still in the not met category? And what sort of interventions do we need to do, be that tier 1 or tier 2 levels, to move our kids on that spectrum?
By him pulling that data for us, even though we have access to it on Tableau, it's way faster, more efficient, and saves us a lot of time.
Those every couple weeks check in on like our big picture goal has helped a lot for me to stay focused, and then I feel like I'm more intentional when I'm using my individual classroom data to make my decisions, because I kind of know those checkpoints are coming every couple weeks.
I've kind of taken my role as how do I facilitate data usage by the PLC, what supports they need from me, and how can I support the PLC leader in taking a more active role. We have seen an increase in the number of proficiencies, specifically with one of my PLCs. They've seen great gains in the number of students meeting proficiency and a decrease in some student failures. They've been more intentional with how they've placed kids in seminars, and so seeing growth by students.
The benefits of this is we're seeing growth. For example, in the English 4 PLC, we're seeing significant growth in students who are proficient. We're seeing a significant level of growth in what those students are able to do at proficiency versus what we saw last year. And that is because we're identifying, we're problem solving early and more frequently, and adjusting our instruction based on what our data is telling us. Also, we're incorporating student voice into this process as well. What are our students saying is working and what's not, and that's been also beneficial to guiding our instructional moves.
We had some interesting discussions about what we're doing for students who are failing from subgroups, talking about, have we made parent contact? If we've made parent contact multiple times, has it been successful? Have we filled out a SIT referral, which rather than waiting until we've gone all the way through the learning process, and it's more dead data than it is data that's going to inform our instruction or our planning for the next block.
Like weekly, we report whether each of us use data to inform an instructional decision. And so I think the weeks where like I haven't and have had to say I haven't have then made me intentionally the next week think about the way that I could, and just kind of got us back on track.
Making that a habit in your PLC every day and holding teachers accountable to following through with that commitment, because the ability of the PLC to understand student learning and make appropriate lessons and interventions and extensions for students depend on teachers following through with that action item. And when you put a face, like you said, we got into some of the specific student names. When you put a face around that data also, it helps you to really understand it in a fresher way.